This fall I've been riding a bunch of Dutch enduro events. Not on an enduro bike, but on my trusty Honda Dualsport. Now you might think this bike has no business riding events like that, and I get it. I mean, deep sand, deep ruts, deep mud. This is some deep shit. You would think this little 24 horsepower bike is way out of its depth in terrain like that. But with a few, mostly simple tweaks, you can turn the CRF250L into a pretty capable off-road machine. So in this video I'll tell you what I've changed on the bike, how that has impacted my riding, and what I wish I'd done differently. Big thanks to NiceCNC for partly sponsoring this video. I've been testing some of the gear and I got something really cool to show you in this episode. Now before we start, let me just quickly give you an update on the headlight situation. If you have been following this channel for longer, you know that for about a year I have had a One Adventure rally tower installed. I absolutely love that thing, but unfortunately I crashed and wrecked it in practice. Oh gosh! One Adventure has been super helpful with spare parts, so big thanks to them as well. But for the remainder of this enduro project, I decided to leave it off, just because these enduro events can get pretty rowdy, and I figured there would probably be more crashes in the future, which of course turned out to be the right conclusion. So no rally tower at the moment, but I will reinstall it as soon as this enduro project is over. Okay, now let's dive into the modifications. You honestly don't need to spend a fortune to make this bike enduro ready. Obviously it will never be as good as an enduro bike, but you can make it good enough to ride the type of terrain. There's really only one modification that will hurt your wallet, which of course is the suspension, but I'll talk about this last because in hindsight I wish I would have done things a bit different here. So we'll first go over the more affordable modifications, starting with the most important one, the gearing. Stock, this bike comes with a 14:40 gearing ratio. Now that may be okay for touring, but it's way too tall for off-roading. So what a lot of people do is they go down one tooth in the front to 13:40. And I think this is like the minimal setting you need for off-roading. I did something similar, but instead of going down one tooth in the front, I went up 3 teeth in the rear, which gives you the same effect. And the reason I did that is because I read and heard several stories online that installing a smaller front sprocket can increase the wear of the chain and chain guide. So for the past 2 years I had been running a 14:43 setup. For a long time this sprocket combo has worked quite well for me, both on and off-road. It has brought the peak torque a bit lower in the rev range, making the bike a bit snappier and easier to handle on the trails, while still maintaining decent highway speeds. However, the first enduro event I rode this year had some pretty gnarly single trails, and the 14:43 combo just didn't cut it there. The trails were tight and muddy with big ruts, and I couldn't carry enough speed to keep the bike in second gear. The revolutions would often drop below 5500 RPM, which made the bike super boggy, forcing me to shift back down to first gear. Even on an underpowered bike like the CRF250L, first gear is still way too twitchy to find some flow, and as a result I was really struggling that day. So that day, a friend who rides a lot of enduro and who has been coaching me a bit, advised me to also go down one tooth in the front. I was a bit hesitant about it because of all the talk about chain and chain guide wear, but after doing some research on Reddit I decided to try it out, and man has that made a difference. So I'm running a 13:43 setup now, and it has made the bike so much easier to handle.
I thought I had to keep riding, right? Oh, it doesn't really matter anymore now.
Instead of shifting between first and second gear, I'm now shifting between second and third, and trail running has become so much smoother because of it. Clutch control and carrying speed have become easier, and even in super tight sections I can keep the bike in second gear without it bogging. If you preload the engine, you can even start from second gear too, which is nice for hill climbs with a short run in, or when you mess up in techie sections. I would not recommend to ride highways with this gearing, because you'd be revving the engine way too high, but for liaisons and back roads it's perfectly fine. The cool thing is that you can use the 13 and 14 tooth front sprockets within the same chain length, so going forward I'll just choose the front sprocket that best suits that day's riding. If I'm going to do some serious off-roading, I'll run 13:43, and when I'm going to ride something like the Trans-Euro Trail, I'll install the 14 tooth front sprocket. Swapping them out is a matter of minutes, so even on multi-day adventure trips I'll bring both sprockets from now on. As for the wear, I haven't noticed any yet, and several redditors told me not to worry about it too much, So I'll just keep an eye on it for now and see how it goes. Now let's talk about something I didn't know I could get excited about. These foot pegs give you a ton of traction in the dirt and they've made my riding a lot easier. These are the extended foot pegs from NiceCNC. They have a so-called lean back platform that gives you extra support to lean back on your bike and fully drive your weight into the rear wheel for better traction. According to NiceCNC, they are designed to help you maintain control through loop sections or long rutted and bumpy straightaways. And in my experience, that is exactly what they do. I've ridden 3 enduro events on them now and they've truly made it easier to drive my weight into the rear wheel.
I'm loving those lean back platforms. Those are nice. Really helps me put my weight on the rear wheel so much more easily.
Because the platforms are sloped, you're not just pushing your weight down vertically, but you're actively driving the rear tire into the ground while automatically lifting the front wheel, which has been super helpful in letting the bike find its way. I have 2 friends who have been coaching me during these events, and the number one thing they're always shouting at me is, which literally means hang back. This was at one of the first events I rode, and I was still running my old pegs here. You can clearly see I'm standing in the center of the bike with my feet leveled on the pegs, not nearly hanging back far enough. But then I installed the extended foot pegs and I finally understood what my friends had been talking about.
Fully in the lean back platforms now. This is nice actually.
I could feel the bike connect to the ground and find more traction. And up until then, I never really felt that click before.
Oh.
In addition to better traction, the pegs also helped carrying speed over brake bumps because, and I'll probably say this scientifically inaccurate, the bike can move more freely underneath you.
Here the lean back platform is just perfect.
Of course, you don't necessarily need lean back platforms to hang that far back. MX riders have been doing it on normal pegs for decades. But the extended foot pegs definitely make it easier. They give you a clear indication of how far back you should be leaning, and the added support also helps you combat fatigue. The courses I've been riding are up to 60 kilometers long and we usually do multiple laps, so anything that helps to reduce fatigue is a welcome addition. I also find the extra support to be confidence inspiring because I'm never worried about my feet slipping off in case I hit a deep rut or bump.
Take it tight, take it tight. Yep. Here these foot pegs really help, like I'm really standing on a slope platform and it makes the rear wheel find so much more grip. This is some deep shit. Yep, you lean back and then your rear wheel connects again and you find a bit of traction. Not too much actually, but a bit is better than none. Lean back and connect. That's how you do it. Up. Surfing. Woo! Surfing the bag.
Like I said at the start of the video, I never thought I'd get excited about a pair of foot pegs, but I can honestly say that these pegs have played a big part in becoming a faster rider, and more importantly, in having a ton of fun. NiceCNC says the lean back platform also helps to prevent ankle injuries when casing a jump, and I'm just gonna take their word for it because it will be a long time before I can comment on that. That day may never even come. One concern I had was that the pegs would limit my ability to absorb bumps with my legs, but that hasn't really been the case. You have to lean back pretty far to touch your heels down on the extended platforms, and I haven't had a single moment yet where I hit them accidentally. I did notice that when you fold it in, it touches the spring of the kickstand, and on the other side just barely touches the brake lever. I already crashed with them in the dirt and that did not have any consequences, but in certain types of crashes, maybe it could have. The kickstand is not exactly a vital part though, so I'm not too bothered with it. For the past 2 years, I've been running the DRC Ultra Wide pegs, which are super popular for the 250L and the 300L. But while they work fine as a budget option, I think that for anyone who focuses on off-roading, these extender foot pegs are much nicer. They have better grip, they help with traction and fatigue, and somewhat surprisingly, weigh next to nothing. As I mentioned at the beginning, NiceCNC is partly sponsoring this video and they did send me those pegs for free. So to be transparent, I got in touch with them after I stumbled upon their quick flip mirrors online, which I think may finally put an end to my frustration with off-road mirrors. They have 2 versions and I wasn't sure which one to get. So I looked for reviews online but couldn't find any. So I figured I'll send them an email and offer to make one. We started talking, they asked me if I saw any other products I was interested in, and then I saw these specs which seemed perfect for this enduro project. So that's why we're here. NiceCNC have been great to deal with and they agreed to give you guys a 15% discount on all of their products using promo code FLM15. I will also earn a small commission when you use that link and I will use that money to keep this channel going. I will never promote a product that I don't plan on using myself, and that brings me back to the extended foot pegs because these will stay on my bike for a very long time. If you want to grab a pair, then check out the links in the video description or the pinned comment below to get your discount. And if you want to know which one of these 2 mirror sets will end up on my bike, then make sure to subscribe because a review will follow soon. Alright, so while we're down here, let's also quickly talk about the shift lever. In a previous modifications video, I had installed a sturdier lever, and the reason I did that is because this stock lever had slammed into the engine casing in a crash.
Woo. Ja. Zo, zomaar.
Because the stock lever is really soft and bends quite easy, I thought installing a sturdier lever would solve the problem, but as it turned out, it actually does more harm. In the first enduro event of the season, I washed out in a turn on the tarmac and the shift lever absorbed most of the impact. As you can see, it's completely bent and again it had slammed into the engine casing. The problem with this lever, however, was that it was super difficult to bend back. Where the stock lever was free from the engine casing in a matter of seconds, for this one I had to use a spanner and it required so much force that I was afraid I might damage the spline. To be honest, several people had already warned me for this in the comments of the previous modifications video, but I was a bit stubborn. Their comments already made sense to me then, but I just installed this one and figured I'll see how it goes. But now I know from experience, softer is better. Now, it may seem somewhat unnecessary to bring a luggage rack into an enduro event, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm in love with this thing. This rack has made it so much easier to pick the bike up again after a crash. It has these 2 huge side handles that I think give you a bit of extra leverage, but mostly just a way better grip, because before I always had to grab the frame, which is a bit awkward.
Come on, boy. Honestly, if you don't have a rack like this installed, you should. It makes picking up the bike so much easier.
It's only 80 bucks on Amazon and I guarantee you the first time you pick the bike up with this rack, you'll think, that was money well spent. I had one event where I literally dropped the bike like 20 times and I really developed like a bit of a special, almost intimate relationship with this rack, so might be too much information, so let's carry on. For tires, I'm using the Michelin trackers. I really quite like them, but to be fair, I'm far from an expert on tires. Before I had the trackers installed, I had a Dunlop D606 in the rear and a Pirelli MT21 Rallycross in the front. I like the trackers much better off-road, but I think I would prefer the Dunlop Pirelli combination on-road. I will always prioritize off-road performance though, so for now I'm staying with the trackers. They have actually performed quite well these events, like I've never really felt that the tire was an issue. If I couldn't find traction, it was mostly just because either my weight wasn't in the right place, or just the surface was just too sloppy or thick or muddy or whatever. Yeah, I don't think I can blame the tires for anything that happened in this event. So they're super affordable. They're also pretty easy to install, which is a nice bonus. Are these the best tires out there? Probably not, but they've worked pretty well for me and for now I'll be sticking with them. If you're only going to change one thing on the bike, then suspension is the upgrade I'd recommend. It will cost you a pretty penny, but it will also give you the biggest performance gains. It will help you to hold your lines better, carry speed more easily, and it will increase your safety, because the stock shock on this bike has tried to throw me over the bars on more than one occasion. With suspension, a lot of riders choose a budget solution to try and minimize the cost a little, because you're talking about $1,000 easily, and I did the same. I've upgraded the bike with YSS suspension. I've opted for the most budget-friendly rear shock and a stiffer spring with thicker oil in the fork. I'm pretty satisfied with the shock. It truly is a massive upgrade over the stock one. It has made the rear of the bike much calmer, it helps with traction, and the bike doesn't kick up against my butt as much anymore, which, you know, is quite nice when you're blasting over whoops or things like that. It feels a lot more planted and a lot safer. Are there better shocks? Absolutely, also within the YSS lineup. Like I said, this is their most budget-friendly version. I've paid 400 euros for this, I think. But if you want to keep the cost low, this will already be a huge improvement. It has some adjustability, but not a whole lot. But I've let YSS install it and they just dial in all the settings for me, and it's pretty perfect the way it is. One thing to keep in mind though is that it does raise the height of your bike a little. So if you're really short, then this is something you might want to consider. Maybe you need a lowering link. And also you may want to install a longer kickstand. I haven't done that because I couldn't be bothered. But sometimes when we take a break alongside the trails, it does get a little wonky. So, you know, it's something you might want to consider. What I'm not too pleased with is the stiffer spring and thicker oil in the fork. Honestly, that is just such a marginal difference. It might be alright if all you're doing is like light adventure touring. But if you're more serious about off-roading, then this just doesn't cut it. It's still super soft. I bottomed it in the first 5 minutes off-road.
Wow, bottom. Whoa. This is why I want cartridges. Bottom. Whoa. Oei. So, that one nearly threw me over.
It still nosedives when you grab a lot of front brake. And in the terrain I've been riding, which is like a lot of deep, sandy, rutted stuff, the front wheel just keeps searching and it feels twitchy and it has a problem holding lines. So
that was close.
yeah, in hindsight, I really wish I would have just forked out the money for a full cartridge system, something like Rally Raid or Öhlins or Andriani. I don't know which one of those is best, but I do know that this is not the solution. So what I think I'll do is I'll leave the shock for now because that is pretty good, and then install one of the cartridge systems. I don't know which one yet, so if you have any recommendations, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'm actually pretty curious about the differences. But yeah, I will install a cartridge system and then go to one of these events again, see how big of a difference it makes. And if the difference is so big that I think, wow, this really transformed the bike, then I may consider installing a better shock as well. But with just these modifications, I've been able to take this bike into some pretty difficult terrain and it handled it all pretty well. That's also the reason why I haven't felt the need to tune the bike or install a different exhaust, because it's a pretty expensive modification and I'm not really sure if the gains are worth the price tag. So maybe I'm completely wrong about it, then feel free to let me know in the comments. I always love a good excuse to spend more money on my bike. So, but yeah, just with these modifications, you know, you can do some pretty cool things on this bike. If you want to know more about the safety mods I've done to the bike, like hand guards, why I have the scratch bar, things like that, then click this video right here. And if you want to know more about these events I've been riding, then click that video right there. For now, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Ciao!